Things just don't make sense. And when the government doesn't make sense, when the government isn't transparent, when they're not honest, it makes people ask questions. Because the word that keeps coming to my mind about this is just incomprehensible. It's simply incomprehensible that something like this could happen. It's negligent. Negligence doesn't even do it justice. There's not a freaking word in the English language that does this justice. I mean, my 11-year-old was like, how'd that somebody get on a building so close to President Trump? Exactly. He's 11. Kids that play Fortnite have more tactical acumen than the people who were making decisions. And oh, by the way, the Secret Service now, as if they'll add insult to injury, is blaming local law enforcement? Are you freaking kidding me? When have you ever heard of a situation where the feds come in to an area and relinquish full tactical command of a mission to local law enforcement? It never, ever, ever happens. If the feds are involved, you got some from the FBI. Hey, I'm with the FBI. I'm sorry, Mr. Sheriff, or I'm sorry, Mr. Local Police Officer, but we got it from here. You know, that's always the dynamic. Always. It makes me so furious. It's a lie. That's the thing that bothers me. It's a lie. And if we're to get justice for what happened, not just to President Trump, but how about the people who lost their lives or might not walk out of there alive? I mean, these are real people who might, one never get to hug their father again. Might not to get the one guy who was shot in the abdomen, again, a Democrat, 60-year-old Democrat. Post pictures online on Facebook of just him hanging out with his grandkids. These people are Americans or Pennsylvanians. They deserve justice too. And to lie in this moment just makes me absolutely furious. And it's not just me saying it. Cory Mills, a sitting United States member of Congress, said this on CNN today. Listen for yourself.
Of these things, and I look at different videos where an assailant will pull a firearm on a law enforcement officer, and the first thing they do is they immediately pull and draw and mitigate the threat and the risk. You know, I ask why the local law enforcement officer did not do so. The other thing is that when you set up an advance team, I keep hearing this about the perimeter elements. Yeah. You know, the perimeter is actually established by your threats that are in the area. So if I don't have any threats outside of 100 yards, okay, fine, I can cordon off a certain area. But if I have a building 160 yards perfectly adjacent to the stage, that's an obvious threat, especially with an elevated position that has overwatch. Mm-hmm. That's a sniper's paradise. And, you know, we talk about Eagle's Nest. You also have, which no one talks about, but the water tower.
So what I'm hearing from you is it's not a failure on the ground for sure, but 100%. Also a failure in advance?
I think it's a failure in advance. I think it's
Listen, look at that graphic. He's talking about the water tower. If you were within close proximity of me that day, I was screaming, building water tower. How these two things could not be secured is simply stunning to me. And Cory Mills is saying it's a failure of advance. Of course it is. But listen.
Failure to have the counter snipers to be able to establish their range fin and their sketch maps.
I also heard we've also learned that local snipers were stationed inside that building.
I haven't heard that piece of it yet, but that doesn't necessarily make sense unless they were actually in a window which was backed off, because a lot of times you'll get yourself in there. Sometimes you expose your rifle in a way to try and do a force protection or a show of force that actually stops things. Others are actually more tactical where they'll sit back a little bit.
So you understand what he's saying there? If there was a SWAT team inside the building that kid was on, it makes sense in that scenario. If you've got two counter sniper teams in Overwatch looking out over the crowd, maybe it makes sense to have a show of force, actually show yourself with a rifle outside of the window. So, you know, if a 20-year-old kid comes out of the woods with a rifle, ammunition, and a ladder, maybe he thinks twice of going in that building.
Sniper for the law enforcement is only trained to shoot about 75 yards, unlike your counter sniper teams that are on set. But here's my problem. In having done this for so long, they always say the adage of ignorance is bliss, and I think that's true. I've done thousands of advances. I've done thousands of counter sniper operations with our teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. The amount of negligence, the amount of mistakes that was made here, I have a very difficult time not leaning myself towards this was intentional as opposed to fecklessness.
But wait, talk to me about that. I actually heard you say this right the day after, which I wanted to ask you about. What do you mean intentional? I mean an intentional failure on the part of...
No, I wouldn't say an intentional failure on the part of, but I got to just...
And by the way, I agree. I don't think that the local police, I know that the local police and the Secret Service agents who were on the ground, I'm telling you right now, I think my thought is, I don't know what happened, but they did the best that they could. Let's just say this, I think with a very, very shitty situation. Keep listening.
I sit here and I scratch my head. You don't want to be the conspiracist. You don't want to be the person.
I'm telling you, because that's what it's leaning toward.
No, I know. And that's the issue, is that you walk this fine balance of, you're not trying to be a conspiracist, but you look at it and you go, how could this have gone so...
But it's one thing if someone on the street says it. It's not, you, Cory Mills, member of Congress, former sniper, you saying it, it makes my eyebrows go up. When you say you're walking the line on this, intentional what?
It almost seems to me, and I think that an investigation is necessary at this point within Congress, not just the FBI, not just others. I look back at it and I'm thinking, all right, for an individual, if you looked at the escalations and how they are trying to approach him, let's just say that it was like, okay, first we want to censor and silence you, then we want to indict and imprison you. Yep. Now we're attempting to kill you and take you off the stage.
So let's slow down.
Please.
I'm hearing two things from you. I don't want to jump ahead of things, but I'm also hearing you jumping ahead of things.
Well, actually, I'm just looking at all the different possible capabilities. One of the things as a military member, one of the things as a person who's run in the special operations communities before, one of the people who's actually done this is that you look at all potential analysis, right?
Donald Trump and his team have said, do not...
No, I agree.
Dial it back. Do not blame this.
All right, listen. What she's saying there disallows any questions at all. Putting military commander hat on. It is our job we're wired like this as former military. And many of you all who are former military know exactly what I'm talking about. But you ask questions about an operation, especially an operation that went wrong. Nothing is off the table. Nothing. Even if it's crazy and absurd, it's on the table until you can rule it out. If it never goes on the table in the first place, then how do you ever rule it out? This idea that after a president was almost assassinated through an unbelievable negligence, that we're not even allowed to ask a single solitary question. And when Cory Mills says, well, God... I'm paraphrasing here. He was more eloquent than me. Well, look at all the stuff that they've done. Try to, destroy the guy's name, all these hoaxes, and try to take his business, his legacy, throw him in jail. Hey, none of that's working. Lawfare's crumbling. So, hey, next step is that's logical thinking.
Mike Lindell here, and like you, I see our country being destroyed daily. We face massive economic issues, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are people in power who threaten the values that have made our country great. Well, I've been a believer in gold and silver for a long time, and I've searched for years for a partner that shares my values. Well, Genesis Gold Group showed me how easy it is to protect your IRA, 401k, or your retirement with gold and silver. Their faith-driven approach to service and stewardship is one that stands out from the rest.
To get your free definitive gold guide and get started learning more about investing in gold and protecting your retirement from uncertain times, visit treasureandtrust.com now. Fill out the basic contact form and a member of the team will be in touch. Again, that's treasureandtrust.com or call 855-625-7760.